and Mackie.
Hello and welcome to Shiny Side Out with...
I've got to make sure I'm not muted, Dave.
And he wasn't, and Mackie on WZZR broadcasting from Australia. Not a fictionary place. For Revolution Radio on revolution.radio and freedomsys.com, where it's more than just radio. So jump in the chat room if you can. This is show number 449, I want to say.
Yeah.
449, 9, 40, and 400. That's a lot of shows. We're going to talk about Bigfoot. Yeah, Yeti, Alma, Yeren, Yowie, Sasquatch. All of those. Bigfoot, right? That's it. Anyway. That should be very interesting. And the reason we're talking about it is because it fits in the show cycle. And we're going to go with the debunkers first. So scout the internet wide and far, looked for a whole bunch of stuff, and we're going to share that with you. So we are on air, online, and on your smart device. And you can grab an app to listen anywhere. Or you can, in fact, listen at home on a Gray's tabletop radio. Now, the reason it's a Gray's tabletop radio is because they have the list, and it lists Revolution.radio as one of the stations directly, which is pretty cool. And that's why it's mentioned here specifically. Now, if you missed Solaris' show, shame on you, shame on me, but I've got a newborn. What's your excuse? She was talking to Betsy Lewis. Betsy Lewis, great guest. And they were talking about extraterrestrial encounters of the extraordinary kind. I love the alliteration. And that's her new book. That's Betsy Lewis's book, I should say. Of course, Solaris herself has got a plethora of published material, including documentaries. Yeah, it's really good. And that's what they were discussing tonight. So if you wanted to catch it, please go ahead. And you can do so by subscribing. Yes, subscribing to the Freedom Slips archives. Only costs $5 a month. Pretty cheap if you consider what everything else costs. Not even a Happy Meal costs $5 anymore.
And it's Patreon now driven, so yeah, enjoy it. It's good fun.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Boom. It's perfect, right? And Patreon is a great platform as well. So go ahead and check out our shows. And look, go and check out our shows while you're at it. Or, in fact, any of the hosts' shows on Revolution Radio Freedom Slips. It's just awesome stuff. It's free. I mean, when I say free, is the content is created free. There's no advertising in there, and the only subscription fee that you pay is that's it. There's nothing else. You're not supporting any corporation or any sinister agenda. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land here in Australia. For me, in my area of Pemulwuy, that's the Darug people. And for Dave,
it's the Darkinjung.
And he's up in the north here north of Sydney.
Central Coast.
Central, that's something, yeah. Which would say there's an upper and a lower coast, but because obviously it has to be middle, that's the center. We acknowledge the custodians, traditional custodians, and we pay our respects to elders, past, present, and future. Very important here to do because we haven't been doing such a great job of being the custodians of the land. We've done an appalling job, in fact. But look,
hang on. What's it called? I'm sorry, I've derailed the whole point. But it's the diplomacy method of the Vikings.
Gunboat diplomacy is what it's called.
The raping and the pillaging.
Just so you're clear, war is the last step in the diplomatic process. It's not a failure of the diplomatic process. It's actually the last step, right? So for violence and force. So don't think that.
Isn't it soapbox and then ammo box?
Ammo box. Yeah, there's the ballot box, the soap box, and
there
then
you go.
The ammo box, as our good friend Jim Mars.
That's right. It was
quite often. He was quite. He's right. He's right though. Ballot, soap, and then ammo box. That's what we're left with. But look, it's been an interesting week. My prediction that the COVID-19 virus would India would eclipse America by the end of October or even November, as I stated, is now completely blown out of the water. And you say, why, Mackie? Why is it blown completely out of the water? Well, because simply. America has done such a great job of having one spike after the other. They're keeping up with the Joneses, or as it were, with the Prasads. in India, where the Indians had a pretty bad time of it from a COVID-19 infection perspective, but America has matched them almost 1-for-1, and it's really quite terrifying if you look at the numbers. I don't care who you are or what your outlook is. It's a real thing, and something is happening.
What you believe in.
Yeah, doesn't matter. Something is happening. It's real enough because we can see the effects. People are dying. I mean, there's 1.2 million people almost. 1.2 million people have gone, perished. It's a lot of people, and we see these infection rates here. We're talking about 500,000 a day, Dave, over the last week. 500,000, and these are the tested people, of course. We test people and we find out what it is. Then you've got people that die from it, and we are 6,000-7,000 a day. The height we had was like 8,000. That was back in April, but these are a lot of people that are dying out here, and these are the numbers that they officially tie to the COVID-19 pandemic. Mm-hmm. I believe very strongly, and I'll keep saying it, once we look back on this event 4, 5, even 10 years down the track, and we look at this from a historiographic point of view, mm-hmm. and we are correlating the statistics and the numbers, we will see a massive spike. And I also believe very strongly, and we've spoken about this event, Dave. We've spoken about this event for a long time now, and we actually said 2020. And the reason we said 2020 is because that's when we will hit 7.76 billion people mm-hmm. on the planet, and it's a number we derived at by using the Fibonacci sequence, which is one of the most incredible number sequences in nature. It's almost everywhere in the shell of a nautilus, in the way that seeds are arranged in a sunflower, etc., etc. So you find this Fibonacci sequence numbers.
The outside of a pineapple, Mickey, the double helix.
Exactly, right?
It's everywhere. It is everywhere in nature.
Yeah, and that's why I applied this number to my little thought experiment, to come up with a number that might lead us to the awareness cascade or significant number. And lo and behold, the number that the formula spat out was 7.76 billion. And then we correlated that with the population of the world and when we would reach that. And the year was 2020, believe it or not. And here we are.
And looking at when that was, back when we started our show.
Yeah, it was quite a while now, right?
And you know what? It's all come to pass. Becky, just before you, I just want to, because we talked about COVID, right? So even I've relented, Mackie. COVID, geez, it's a disease, not the virus. But anyway, I'll shut up. Mackie, globally now, we've hit a 500,000 people new cases per day.
That's right. Yeah.
I've got the graphs on the screen, and what I've also done is, just while we're talking about that, and I know that in our chats during the week with one of the friends of the show, that we have a group and we throw bandy ideas around and new information. One of those is, where are all of the countries in the top 12 countries as far as spike is concerned? And I've actually, you can't see it right now, but if you looked at the YouTube, Mackie, you'd see this. And I've pasted the YouTube link into the chat room and also onto my private Facebook to get out there. And if you know me, check it out because it's really important. From a let's talk to it kind of discussion, and what I was putting out there, and we were talking about during the week, was this initial spike with its terrible case fatality rate, with our poor knowledge and where we were at and who it was infecting, and now that we have a greater and deeper understanding and better treatments, and we've, to some extent, I think across the entire globe as an average, to some extent, practice social distancing, whether or not masks are in your belief system or not. But let's just put it this way. Even the countries, Mackie, where they've always worn face coverings, they are still having issues. We've adopted them. I think the asymptomatic group of people out there that aren't getting tested because they show no symptoms who are spreading the virus. I think there's still a lot to go there. One of our national airline in Australia, Qantas, has stated, and I don't know whether this is on the QT or public information, but it came to me, so I can't be... I don't know how it came to me, but it came to me through a number of people past, several Bothans lost their lives bringing this information to us, right, from Star Wars, that 2024 is the year that they're announcing that they may begin international travel again.
Qantas mentioned that they're looking at 2024 to resume, correct? That's extraordinary. That's actually extraordinary.
It is, and so that's what started me looking at these spikes, the global spikes in our respective countries, because I know we have listeners all around the world, and hello to each of you in your countries and where you are, and thanks for inviting me into your lives. But America is on its third spike as far as daily cases are concerned. India is trailing off, with the US peaking at 80,000, but India trailing off down to about 55,000. Brazil down at 30,000. Russia, while it's on its second big peak, it's still climbing, but it's maybe 18 or 16,000, 17,000. United Kingdom is on its way up with a huge peak up at 70-something thousand, right? But it's still climbing and will probably be at 50,000. That was like a blip. Argentina's still going up at about 20,000, nearly 20,000, 17,000, Spain, its daily average going up is still rising. Colombia's tapered off, but going back up again. Peru is tapering off entirely, southern hemispheric, right? Mexico, you could say it peaked out about maybe 8,000 and then it dropped down to nearly 5 and then it's going back up again. United Kingdom going off the charts at over 25,000. And South Africa, once again, the southern hemisphere is going into summer and the UV has already started up, and there's 28 days living on a surface outside. It's now starting to kill it. I think it's giving it some grief. But this is it, Mackie. This is the thing, right? That I wanted to get that out there because I'm tracking this damn thing, and for whatever it means, that Australia seems to have been able to curb it enough that we've had two independent peaks of each other. And it's interesting when I'm just going to bring it up because we're at 27,000 and the daily case load has had two independent spikes and we're back down to, 18 a day nationally, right? So I think we're in a good position if we're looking to completely eliminate the virus, but will we ever get there? It's chasing ghosts, Mickey.
So we don't have to, and I don't think we can, and I don't think that's the game anymore anyway. People will survive the virus. They will have long-term health effects. We will get better at dealing with the virus. We have to worry about the next virus. So this thing here is going to be with us for the foreseeable future, is my opinion.
And the third wave, Mickey, that keeps coming out in Freudian slips in politics.
Yeah. But these waves will keep coming. Look, the thing is this, right? This. I got a couple of points, but I need to say this first.
Go on.
We have a very fine balancing act here, right? So this is not the deadliest virus we've ever encountered. It isn't. It really isn't. Right? But it's extremely infectious. It's also quite debilitating if you get it bad, right? So in order to keep the death number low, right, we have to get people respirators, hospital care, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. It's about just on 4%, I think, right?
Oh, 3.85% case fatality rate now. It's still dropping.
Yeah, the CFR is pretty low. Now, that we know anyway. It's the knock-on effects. The key thing here, though, is this, because it is so virulent, it is so infectious, and it can wipe out the elderly quite significantly. And it seems to have what is now termed the long COVID, which is the health effects it has going on beyond that we need to control it, right? So this is not just the flu where we all get the flu and then it's all good. Some people die, some live. This is much worse. But the problem is it's not so much the pandemic. The problem is the economic impact, and that's what I'm talking about. The fine balancing act. We are walking a tightrope around whether or not we can open up, and then we close the economy again. We open up, the cases spike, and up and down and up and down. If we all had enough hospital beds for everybody on the planet, we could open the economy. No problem at all, right? Because then get sick, that's fine. The hospital will take care of you, etc. But we're not there. We can't do it, and even conditions that are not COVID related at all might become fatal because the hospital beds are simply full.
Well, we already know that's happening in some countries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, India, look everywhere. I mean, Australia, we got lucky. So it is the fine balancing act that we're going. But it is the economic impact here. But more so than that, Dave. More so. As we said earlier, for the hypothesis, we always expected 2020, and I hate to say this, and I mean, I'm not a doomsayer, and I don't gloat, and I'm not at all happy that we were right on this one, but we've been saying this for a very long time, and 2020 was the year, and lo and behold, here we are. I think we've effectively prevented the awareness cascade. Unbeknownst to me, Dave, until recently, unbeknownst to me, there's an event that is going to take place in Australia at Uluru.
Yeah, we found out only a little while ago.
Exactly. But we had no idea when the hypothesis was first formulated that this was actually a thing. And we learned it a few weeks ago from the strong father and son duo, the research duo. I want to call them really great people and really good research. But it lines up with the hypothesis as well. It's astounding how it does. So are we prescient? Do we have prophetic powers? No, we do not.
Perfect timeline.
Yeah,
they both came to the same point. Yeah. But Mackie, I'm just going to say, coming into 2019, Mackie and I did not know how this was going to play out. Right to the end of 2019, we saw a virus emerging that it didn't matter so much because it wasn't here, and we saw what was going on in the world, and we thought, I don't know how can it happen. How can the awareness cascade take place, and what shape will it be? We don't know.
And having said that, though, I think it is clear that the general feeling on the planet, which is not fear, the general feeling on the planet is fear, and it's such a visceral fear, such an immediate fear because it affects everybody personally. A war, other things as well, they might affect some people personally, but this thing. Because it is everywhere, and everybody's at risk, and everybody has got restrictions. Everybody's in lockdown. Everybody has to wear masks. Everybody's economy is in tatters. It's affecting everybody on the planet. This is the perfect scenario to stop the awareness cascade, to stop the spontaneous ascension that we propose. But so that's one scenario. Okay, so again, it was 2020. We always said it would be 2020. The next thing to think about, Dave, and this is why Australia, I think, and other island nations, relatively speaking, are in good shape. I've always wondered why in Australia we have so much infrastructure work. I always wonder. I mean, we've got a lot more infrastructure work than we should have any right to have. Like buildings are going up, roads are being built. Not just in the major cities, but in Australia, there's a lot of infrastructure work going on. Not only that, we are producing enough food for 3 times our population. Okay, so we got 20, 25, 26 million people. We produce enough food for 75 million people, right? Et cetera, et cetera. And look, yes, Australia is largely desert. That's true, but it's also a continent the size of the continental United States.
That's right.
So there's a lot of space. So people say, there's so much space. There's a bucket load of space, right, for people. So my proposition is this, Dave. I'm saying this. A lot of the island nations, like Greenland, like New Caledonia, et cetera, that are relatively virus-free, including Australia, are going to become safe habitats.
Yes.
Okay? This is what's happening. We are becoming safe habitats. Well, that's why they are making... And look at New Zealand. New Zealand is in the same boat. That's why these laws are so strong in our countries are on lockdown. And that's why we lock down at the slightest little thing, because that's something else that's being raised by a lot of people on the internet. Look at our numbers, especially in Melbourne. Melbourne is, of course, where I guess our infection is at the moment at its highest. But compared to other countries, it's completely It's completely infinitesimal. You don't even notice it. It wouldn't even be a blip on anyone's radar.
No, not at all. Yeah.
But because Australia, in my opinion, is going to be a safe habitat
Mm-hmm.
for economic refugees, etc., climate refugees, but only the wealthy, I think.
And also, mega disaster refugees, because we're already signed up to receive people from around the world.
They're going to come here. And this year we have had no immigration at all. It's already being touted as a massive problem. So our immigration is in the scores now, or the dozens.
Our tiny little economy was living off the back of our new citizens arriving.
Our population growth is nowhere where it needs to be to create a sustainable nation. So we've always lived off the population growth coming from the immigration. I myself immigrated here 30 years ago with my family, right? So, the vast majority of Australians wouldn't have been born here or are first generation. So I believe that Australia is going to be a habitat, and I think initially for the wealthy. That's my opinion. Mm-hmm. It's going to be, for those that can. Same with New Zealand. So Australia and New Zealand is going to be in a bubble. Interestingly enough, I also believe that this bubble will include Singapore. Again, a small place. Again, don't forget, Singapore also is an island nation. Which is really funny that way.
Yeah, that's right.
And a few Pacific islands potentially as well, but they're definitely, Greenland is definitely one, a safe habitat. Doesn't have the infrastructure, though, to sustain a massive population. So a lot of people will come here over the next few years, my opinion. And that's why we're seeing such strict biosafety, biosecurity laws, lockdowns as well now. I think to create this real, not just a virtual, but a real bubble in the world
safe
that
haven.
Can be safe. Yeah, safe haven. That's where we are. And it's going to happen. Okay, so what will happen to the original population in Sydney or in Australia? I don't think anything will. It'll just be a lot more people coming in here, and house prices, properties, etc. I think the prices are going to go through the roof, is my opinion. If you own land or you're thinking of buying something, buy it now. Okay.
Yeah, it depends on the profile, Mekki, of those people that are coming first.
Well, because I believe that we will see a massive influx of people over the next 10, 15 years, maybe sooner, I think because they have to live somewhere, right? And jobs will be created. And as soon as you get 10,000 people coming in, they'll be working somewhere, and the jobs will be created around them, like the cafes, and the utilities, civic works. Australia, believe it or not, our public service is gigantic. We have got a massive public service, right? Local, state, national. It's gigantic. It's a machine. And there will be more and more people coming. And I think that will go hand in hand with the living wage as well, I believe. In some ways, we will see a continuation of government handouts in Australia because the economy will collapse if we don't have that. Or alternatively, we could see a lot of people being foreclosed, and then overseas investors could come and snap up the property, right? That's another scenario if you want to take the sinister view on this. Whichever way we're going to slice this, though, Dave, that the world as we know it has now come to an end.
And look, that's one of the things we mentioned last week in the Great Reset. It's coming from the World Economic Forum, from a climate perspective and an economic perspective and a viral perspective, being and this catchphrase that the governments all around the world. You can hear me, right? Yeah. So the governments all around the world are talking about, and that is never miss the perfect opportunity.
I completely agree. The Great Reset that you just mentioned, I think, look, all the people in the video, they're talking about this is an opportunity for us to do something, to have this Great Reset, to change the world. Now, I'm all for it. I think the system that we have is doomed to failure. It's going to eat itself. It's a zombie system that's going to eat itself.
It's created zombies.
It has. And it's actually completely unsustainable. Okay, the Harvard business model of the world is completely unsustainable. And we've learned this. In fact, Greenspan, we said this many times, Greenspan himself said, you know what? I've been wrong. Everything we've done is wrong. Wow. The system that we have created is not viable in the future. There's really only a few ways out of it. Now, one of the ways would be a Great Reset. That's a really, it's not a bad idea, but you have to always look at the motives, and you also have to look at who's executing, Dave. The problem here is which way is it going to be pushed? So the concept, like communism as a concept, is great, right? Everybody's equal, everybody's happy, kumbaya, right? In reality, because people are involved, it isn't. So with the Great Reset, same thing. A great concept in principle, but who is executing and what is the outcome? So the
outcome is the rich stay rich, making everyone else just gets along.
Exactly. And the other way to get out of this particular dilemma, I mean, globally that we're looking at is war. And again, it's same outcome, because the rich didn't go to war. I mean, I'm talking about the really rich people. I'm talking about the people that make the rules. Okay, those are the people I'm talking about here.
They're above government.
It'd be nice to get the Great Reset and plow them under as well. Level those people. I'm serious.
You're gonna have to get your kids to start your car in a minute, Trini. That's right, Trini. That's my daughter's name, Becky. You know what I'm saying?
I know. But you know what? I'm not saying anything new here, right? Everybody who's got half a brain in their head understands where we are. Look, even let's assume there are no conspiracies, Dave, in the world. There are no conspiracies. Nobody is working toward a goal. There are no elites that are working together to a certain outcome. Let's say just that's the case, right? Even if this was all just happening, right? What's happening right now is that we're concentrating the vast majority of the global wealth, a few percentage points or even fractions of percentage points of the world population. Okay, and whenever that happens, and it has happened in the past, the Roman Empire is one. Okay, whenever that has happened, it has led to complete collapse of whatever civilization was prevalent in the world at the time. It has happened. It's inevitable, because you are destroying the basic economic foundation for your civilization if you move too much wealth into one bucket. Especially
that's absolutely
right. Tiny bucket. Yep. That's where we are. And look, so that's even if there are no conspiracies, Dave. That's just it's just a natural. It's almost like a biological thing.
It's built into a few, not all of us, to want more than everybody else. And there's an old Native American tale about one of the hunters in the clan, I think is the wrong word, where they believed they were better and deserved more food. And the better food. And that's a whole story about you shouldn't feel that way, because that will ruin the community. It ruins the community. One person believing they're better than everyone else.
The very important term you've just used, Dave. Community? Probably the most important term ever. Community. What is a community? Community is a collection of people, or collective, even if you want, of people that have come together to work for a common purpose. That's a community. They live together. Not everybody's always going to get along. That's fine. There will be rules, and it could be very simple social contracts. But a community has got a single goal. And in a community, everybody knows one another. In a community, people can live as people. We no longer have communities unless you live in a village somewhere, or are somewhat disconnected from the rest of the world. We live in a global sausage factory. That's where we live.
We live with anonymity with our neighbors.
100%. I've given this example years ago. I'm going to give it to you again. In a village, between 5 and 10,000 people would live. That's a normal-sized village. If that many people, they're not all your best friends, but you know every face. And you know the families, and you know the backstories, and there's trust. It's very difficult for a serial killer to hide in a village. Very, very difficult, right? Or anyone, or any other criminal for that matter, right? I mean, everybody knows who would be, that person. That's a village, like they're living, in the countryside, whatever. If you have 5 or 10,000 people in an apartment building, you will not know your neighbor. I guarantee it. And maybe you will know the people on your floor, maybe, or you know the people that catch the elevator with you at the same time as you do, right? You might by sight you know them, but chances are you don't have a community in that building. There's just people living next to each other. We have destroyed the feeling of community. So we've destroyed the community. The next step then was to destroy the family unit, right? And we're making great advances in doing that. Letting children emancipate themselves at an early age. Giving them support from the government to move out. We've encouraged generational welfare payments, which
they can sue their own families. That's right.
100%. But it destroys people's, pride and self-worth. Because the fastest way to destroy a culture, and talking about indigenous cultures here specifically, is you give them money. You rob them of purpose. You rob people of purpose, and you will destroy their culture, because then they have to find purpose elsewhere. Usually drugs, alcohol, crime, whatever it might be, right? Violence, and that's been a policy. And I don't care what you say. I've observed it all my life. I've seen it, especially with indigenous people, but not just. It's also with what people call the underclass, the poor, right? In the indigent, the people that really can't take care of themselves. We are destroying them as well. We're destroying.
You give them a sniff of money, Mackie, and then you deprive them of being able to achieve it.
Yeah, but it's. Let me put it this way. I see it with my children. I myself know, Dave, you know it, and all of our listenership, I'm sure, knows it as well. If you achieve something, you feel good. Okay?
Yeah.
If even if, let's say, you just beat yourself. Maybe you're a jogger. Maybe you go jogging every day, right? Or you're
personal
cycling.
bests.
Personal best. I've gone for an hour, and tomorrow I might try for an hour and a half, whatever it might be. The point is, you need a feeling of achievement, a feeling of self-worth. You need to feel that, hey, okay, I've achieved something. And it doesn't matter if you're the only person that knows that. I mean, the more people know, the better, of course. It's self-esteem. But ultimately, if you don't have a feeling of purpose or a feeling of achievement, you will have a miserable, short life. Okay, you will. You will. And look, people are driven to suicide that way. It's a funny thing. And it's also giving you hope. My granduncle spent, I think, 14 or 15 years in Siberia in a gulag after World War II. He was part of the 6th Army in Stalingrad, and he was one of the few survivors. So I think it was 14 or 15 years. He didn't much speak about it, but I looked, because it was immediate, it was my family history, I looked into it. In these gulags in Siberia, when survivors came back and talked about it, the study was done, people survived, right? And other people did not survive. You think, they were weaker or physically, sick or whatever. That's not the truth at all. The truth is, the person that survived was the person that could cling on to hope or purpose. The person that had lost hope or purpose would simply curl up in a corner and die. And that's a fact.
And it's actually, to support that, Mackie, it's possible if you're a first aider, for instance, and someone's broken their leg really badly, they can die in front of you by letting go of hope.
Yeah.
If you don't deal with it in a positive way, if you freak out and they see that as they're going to fail, they're going to not make it, they can just let go of life and they can up and die on you.
100%. You're absolutely correct. Our mind, I'll come back to this, is a powerful tool. It's the most powerful tool we have. People talk about the placebo effect, etc., etc. That's your mind healing yourself. Your mind is healing your body. Your mind. If your mind is broken, if your mind loses hope, that's it. Your body will follow. Right? That's what Dave just said. You're 100% correct. And but look, let's talk about the because this is really interesting, right? We're talking about the body healing itself, and now we're dealing with a whole bunch of diseases at the moment, specifically COVID-19, and so forth. But we're also having vaccine trials, Dave. And I know there's an article here that you found, which is really disturbing or somewhat concerning.
Yeah, this is the AstraZeneca shares fell in the last week after the Brazilian Health Authority reported that a volunteer in the COVID vaccine study up and died. That was it. Now, there's still questions out that they're not telling us whether they had received the saline solution or they received the vaccine trial. But the spokesman from the AstraZeneca declined to comment on the volunteer, citing medical confidentiality and clinical trial regulations. However, it's been discovered that it was a doctor who passed away who'd volunteered themselves to be part of the trial. Now, this is not the first person to have had medical issues from it. I'm not trying to denounce vaccines because I have my flu jab every single year, and I have for since I've been earning, I suppose a decent wage in IT management. I've got to be there, right? And frontline work. So look. Having said that, the other person developed, as we've already reported a number of weeks ago, that they suffered spinal cord damage. So their body started to eat their own spinal cord. Yeah, that's not good. I was bitten by a tick, I don't know, about 10 years ago. And the foreign blood, which my body was able to capture and destroy, that came from the tick, from eating a native Australian animal first, consuming their blood. When it connected to me, it not Lyme disease, but my body started to attack my own cartilage, and I had a real hard time with that. That was So I can see how we've got to be very careful with these, and the expectation, Meki, that has been bandied around and tried to give once again, that I'm going to link this back to the word hope, has been that we're going to see a vaccine any minute, right? It's just going to be a military officer at the door going, "Hey, it's your turn for a jab. We know there's this many people at home. Here you go." And we're going to walk away and everyone's going to be fine. And then we can give you a vaccine passport, which you can show at all the checkpoints, right? And you can go about your way. You can go back to international travel. But, in the real world, because that's fantasy. In the real world, we're really talking about, 2 to 10 years for a vaccine. And it's a segue to the presidential debate where it came up, Meki, this week, and I watched all of it. And to hear there that there's a promise that it'll be by the end of the year, I'm certainly not going to be in the front of the line for it. And once again, and I say this, and I've said this for like the past 3 months, the UK is not declaring people healthy because they've recovered from the virus symptoms, because still in the full belief that it's not over. So, and people are becoming reinfected. There was another story this week, reinfected, and but because there's multiple strains, you can become infected by a different strain of the same virus, and your body can't see it. It doesn't, it's like a version 2 of the virus pattern, so it can't quite identify it very readily. So it's pretty tough.
But think about this for a second. I mean, and then I don't want to derail your point here, but what if this new thing, this virus, and let's talk about it that way, it can't be. I guess your immune system cannot develop an immunity for whatever reason it might be. Okay, because there are diseases like that. Okay, I mean,
the flu every season, Meki, is like that.
Well, because the virus does change. But what if this virus, this specific thing, your immune system simply cannot handle? What if it just, it's just bad luck to you, right? I mean, not everybody, because clearly not everybody dies from it, and not everybody's got severe symptoms. But what if there's a subset of people that simply they just can't. Their immune system simply cannot handle it. And I think that might be due to the fact maybe that we've so debilitated our immune systems. We've made ourselves such easy prey for who really is at the top of the food chain, which is, viruses and bacteria. I think
that's a really good point.
Change.
Yeah, so all of this hand sanitizer is actually going to drive us down that path of cleaning us into sickness.
Yes.
You see this too, right?
100%, my friend.
Like Golden Staph was created in a hospital, just simply by cleaning the hospital.
100%. A good friend of mine, James Whitehall from work, we used to work together. His father is a doctor, and his family very much in the medical profession. And we spoke about this 10, 12, 13 years ago. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, what the worst thing that ever happened to us? He said, what? He said to me, these antibacterial stove wipes or counter wipes. Yeah. What we're creating generations and generations of pathogens that are no longer susceptible to any of our treatments. We are creating our own worst enemies.
Absolutely. Completely agree. So, that's my phrase, right? I've boiled it down to cleaning us into sickness. That's what we're going to do. We're going to become more susceptible to the slightest viruses because we've prevented ourselves from becoming in contact with them. Simple as that. Remember, at the moment, ducted air conditioning was a thing, and everyone was wiping their surfaces down and using all of those, wonderful products that we all grew up believing were wonderful wonder products. The people that grew up in those environments where they're up in an apartment, no contact with soil or anything, and the slightest thing would make them ill. That's where we're going. But anyway, if we've got nothing else on the vaccine, because I didn't really want to touch it out because I don't want people to get the wrong impression.
No, I get you.
You know what I mean? So sorry about that. But the next thing was presidential debate. Wow. I'm not sure the muting of the microphone was really a thing.
I think the winner was the lady who was running it. She was great.
Yeah, she was. But the questions and answers, the questions that I think that they were able to get her to ask, it's like they were sent a survey. Okay, give me 10 questions you want to be asked and 10 you want to ask them, the opposition. Because it just felt like they were preloaded with some answers and not just trained up, but preloaded with answers specific to that question, and they didn't go off topic. And then there was ones that were complete curlers that threw them both in the direction. And I don't think Trump had an earpiece. I'm dead set certain that Biden did, though. Because I would watch him go into this concentrating mode. He's trying to listen for something.
Look, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. And I've only ever seen very, very few people that are effective public speakers off the bat. Very few people without rehearsing.
I always thought Obama was so charismatic he could answer any question.
Yeah, and yes, when it came to speech making, though, and questions, you're right. But still, he had to know the answer and rehearse some of it. But
yeah,
he actually most of the speeches he gave were on auto cue.
That's true.
Very effective speaker. Now, I happen to have seen people that work with the auto cue because I've gone to a lot of sales conferences in my time with tens of thousands of people in one room, which is just crazy. But one of my old CEOs from many years ago, he was completely off the auto cue.
Really?
But his message,
that's a group to their own. It's a class.
He was phenomenal. But the message he had given to, I guess, so many times before, it was just like you and I talking about the weather, right? But he was very effective. Whereas people, that followed him,
not so much,
couldn't even read the auto cue. But yeah, there's a lot to be said for effective orating, speech giving, etc. And Biden, yeah, he did stumble a few times as well, right?
Yeah.
Concepts. He may have been fed answers either way. Trump, no, I think Trump knows this. See, this is the thing. If you speak with conviction and you just talk to what you know, that's great. I mean, look at George W. Bush Jr. He would always stumble if he talked about things that he didn't understand, like foreign policy, etc. He would just, make an ass of himself. But as soon as he talked about something that he knew about and that he was passionate about, he was off and running. He was bang. After 9/11, all the speeches were, they were actually not bad because he dealt with something that he could understand.
He could talk to. It's absolutely.
Yeah, he could talk to it, right?
So, just make it some points. I captured some points here. There's a news article on the screen, but you read through it for yourself. It's in the show notes. He made a point that he's not a politician, and he kept making references to Biden being the politician every time Biden gave the political answer. He was very, very cunning. That was one thing I noticed. The other one was that he clearly brought up the Hunter laptop thing with the foreign powers and the money, and that was really cool. Because I like when they have something of substance to dig at, right? But his main defense was that Biden did none of the things that he was promising that he was going to do after the election in the prior 40 years, or at least the 8 years when he was VP for Obama. So I know he's not president, and I know the reason for it because the president gets to make all those, ideas. But if he couldn't, if he couldn't float them and have something to do with it, but then he couldn't claim ownership of it. So he, you know what I mean? I really found that a complicated position for him to be in.
No, it is. But look, these are fair questions that Trump raised. I mean, you had 8 years in power as vice president. Why didn't you do any of the things that you said you would? This is not a political answer. This is just a reality. So the way that the political system in America is structured, you got the Senate, the Congress, you got the president. So the president goes ahead and proposes some laws, then they have to be debated by Congress and passed by Congress. If they do not pass by Congress, they never make it to the Senate. The problem that Obama had, and that's why Obama had so many presidential decrees. In fact, more of the presidential decrees than any other president since.
In fact, all of them totaled together in the past.
Because Congress was with the Republicans, and they just blocked him on every turn. To throw rocks now and saying he was ineffective is because the Republicans made it so, right? So
exactly.
So it's a fair defense, right?
It was.
So in order for government to work properly, you would hope that everybody works in the country's best interest. That is no longer true. I'm not saying the Democrats or the Republicans are preferable here. In my opinion, any party is just bad. Any political party is a bad thing, right? That's my opinion. And we should always deal with people. People should be in charge and power. They should make policies, etc., etc. Now, having said that, it is clear to me that nothing is going anywhere in America as long as you've got those parties in power, because none of these people are actually working for the best interest of the country. They're working for the best interest for themselves or for their party.
That's right.
Voting along party lines or the filibuster. That's just my favorite thing, where you just talk in order so you don't have time to lodge something to.
In fact, it's a buffer overrun attempt.
100%. That's what it is.
I know, right?
And so this is the fundamental flaws with the American system. Now, the founding fathers, and they're all men. It's like no mistake. I think they didn't conceive of a time when people that were educated and in these positions wouldn't act in the best interest of the people. Maybe they couldn't conceive of it, right? Maybe that was their shortcoming. But that's where we are, because nobody gives a hoot about the people. Nobody, right? The only powerful groups in Washington are the lobby groups, and they're the only ones that get their laws passed. You know, the people that matter, or the people that should matter, I should say, don't anymore at all. Not even a little bit. All right, and that's unfortunately where we are. So did Biden cop out? Not really, because he has. I mean, it's not an excuse. It's a fact. And did you
see what I've written there about Biden's 4 points?
Go on.
Yeah. So Biden said.
Yes.
That he agreed with the Washington Post's review of the laptop, saying that Russia was involved. But I mean, at the moment, there isn't anything at all that suggests that Russia was involved at all, since it was Biden's Hunter's laptop, and So
the question is, I mean, this is another interesting question. So this is implicating his son, Hunter Biden, right?
That's right.
Now, no one is implicating Joe Biden in anything. So as far as that is concerned, we're just throwing mud at the family. And I mean, the Democrats are throwing a lot of mud onto the Trumps as well.
There was a lot of mud
fair
going
enough, I guess, but it's completely inconsequential. No one is voting for Hunter Biden. You're voting for Joe Biden, right?
No, so it's sort of a bit of a cheap shot, right?
Well, but it's also beside the point. I mean, unless you believe that Hunter Biden will somehow have a hand in government, which I don't think he will, but you can't say the same thing about the Trump family, because he surrounded himself with his family, right? And now the thing is this, right? Did the Biden family take advantage of Joe Biden's name, etc., etc.? 100%, 100%. They went to the feeding trough. Do the Trumps do the same? In spades. Does anybody in a position of power
do this? It's a 1-to-1.
It's somewhat, but anybody at the feeding trough, at the pig trough, as it were, of politics or power, does the same thing. This is what the system is. This is what the system is set up to do. So
it supports it. In fact,
absolutely, it's built that way.
Yeah. So I know we have only got a few minutes left. So
that went fast.
I know Biden agrees with climate change, but the only thing it seems is he's being held back by the energy companies, the energy corps. preventing him from actually getting to any kind of thing. He wants to go back on the Paris Accord, but everything was mentioning was really long term, but no changes for a really long time. So, and he also believed that fracking was a way forward and that renewables were useless. So, I thought that was really interesting. And he did bring up a fighting point against Trump, though, that Trump believed in, windmills giving you cancer. That's because Trump he is on the conspiracy side of the world and doesn't entirely believe the mainstream media's messaging. So I'm not saying it causes cancer. I'm just saying, commentating. But he also mentioned Trump's taxes and foreign bank account in China. And so I think there was a lot of mud going between each other, right? But neither of them, Mickey, this is my point, neither took the high road.
No, and I think this is not this campaign. This is not a campaign where people will, whether do it. There will not be a gracious defeat. There will not be, So
what happened to Hillary when she tried to take the high road?
Yeah, no, exactly. Look, there's one thing that I wanted to mention before we run out of time, and this is to do with science and what we know about the world. Mm-hmm. Now, human anatomy, you'd think, would be pretty well known. So there shouldn't be any surprise when it comes to human anatomy. They shouldn't find another finger. Or they shouldn't find another organ in your body, right? I mean,
another finger. That's really funny, yeah.
Right? They shouldn't. I mean, we should know. I mean, we've autopsied and dissected and anatomically examined millions of bodies. I want to say at this point, millions. I'm sure, right?
Getting cut up every day in learning school.
To the most minute detail, right? Now, it turns out though that we didn't know all we thought we knew. They found two salivary glands behind, inside, just behind your nose, if you will. Fairly large, 2.5 inches. So these are not small mucus glands; they're fairly large mucus glands, and we didn't know they existed. So they went back to dissect some cadavers, and they found, they're there. Now, they only found this by accident, and this is actually quite important because, especially in cancer treatment and when it comes to radiation treatment, they were just irradiating that area, not understanding or not knowing clearly that there were salivary glands there, mucus glands, right, which actually could be detrimental to your health. Now that they know it, they can adjust their protocols and give you the right treatment. But my point here is, after thousands and thousands of years of anatomical studies on the human body, we found a new gland. Now, this is going to my overarching point of science and always being one step behind. There are so many things we don't know, right? If you had told anyone last week we're going to find a new, mucus gland in the body, nonsense.
That's exactly right.
This person shouldn't be a scientist, blah, 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 whatever, right?
Yeah.
But lo and behold, there it is, right? And then this goes sort of to the heart of the show today as well, and we're going to share, this is going to be the next hour. We're going to start with a debunking point of view in our show. But Dave, isn't it astounding that after thousands and thousands of years of anatomical studies, we found we find
existing.
We find an existing, a gland in our body.
Yeah.
It's not a tiny gland either.
No, they're not. They're about as large as two joints of your little pinky finger at the back of your nose, all the way at the back of your throat, the top of your throat. And it's the mucus glands are what liquefy or moisten your nasal passage from there back down to where the back of your mouth. So interesting though. That's the exact place, and Mickey and I talked about this before the show, is where that the toilet brush goes in to pick up samples of the coronavirus.
Yes,
that's where it goes all the way back to, and they've got ACE2 receptors in there, and so it's also a blooming area for the virus, and it's not directly connected to the virus testing, but it just happens to be that's where we've been testing. Mm-hmm. Extraordinary. Like, there's the music. Well, look, it's only a short break. We'll be right back after the top of the hour and, take a break, toilet break, drink break, or maybe donate to the station. Catch you soon. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, I established a brand new YouTube stream after. All right? Take care.